Oh, why do I care about this? It's just an LFE. Why do I care about it? You know, people still talk about it. That's why I'm talking about it. I've got to talk about it like I got to breathe. LFE. Feel the low frequency, young Skywalker. Come to the LFE side. Yeah, there's more talk of it on Audio Science Review. My goodness. Oh dear. You know, fucking hell, people are still talking about it like it's such a controversial thing since, I don't know, maybe the beginnings of Censor Round, or maybe the beginnings of someone in a base, in a garden shed or somewhere, wherever it was in the 1960s in America, made in America. You know, the sub bass, you know, and for hi-fi, and probably wasn't very popular back then. It was probably very limited in its you know, whatever price they were sticking on the bloody thing. Yeah, today it's just so common. A sub bass sub bass is just a get a DSP. Yeah, you crossover management system. You just put a filter in, and they say, okay, that range from there, 120 hertz or maybe 250 hertz, depending on what it might be. I mean, 70 millimeter, 70 millimeter was 250, I think, 250 down to the lowest, 25 hertz, maybe. And then it changed, the spec changed on the digital to 120 down to 5 hertz. Increased dynamic range bullshit sort of thing. And but people are still talking about it, and they keep mentioning 80 hertz. The 80 hertz thing is only really a THX thing, and that is only really because to keep the typical voicemail dialogue sound from booming out of the sub. So it's just a crossover, just to filter it off, you know, because the dialogue typically range might sort of stop around about 100 hertz when you voice it, and so even though it can just pitch maybe to about 90 hertz, and you just have a steep 24 dB octave at about 80 hertz, and it just filters off theoretically most of the male voice dialogue. So that's the only reason, and that's the only reason for use for, say, Dolby Stereo movies, 424 matrices. But when it switches to digital, that crossover range would go back to about 120. So, you know, any effects or whatever low frequency will go from 120 down to the lowest. It depends. But there are, say, you know, you can set the crossover to 250 hertz. I think it can be, I think it's 200. Is it 200? I think it's 200. I think it's about 200 hertz on the Storm Audio. And I can't actually recall if it is 250 on the Denon. But the, you know, 200 hertz, I mean, okay, so for example, if there was any sort of content, you don't want it too directional coming from the sub. Okay, I was just thinking, okay, so what if I were to put a one crossover setting going to about maybe 120, or maybe experiment with the front and just set it to maybe 80 hertz. Okay, and then the next output I would have I would take the output, the other extra output, and through the Behringer DCX, and then set that to crossing over on the low end. So I'll bring it up a little bit to about 120, and then I'll expand the rest of the LFE signal to go up to about 200 hertz on the Storm processor, and then go from 120 hertz up to 200. But where should I put that signal? And or should I monitor it first through the other subs just to see, how many films, that not that I care at the present moment today about movies, but just to see what sort of content goes from about 120 hertz up to 200. I might pick things out maybe about 120, but it's also, it's just checking and curiously maybe looking. I think I did look at that Revenge of the Sith last year. That's when I was just about kind of so in a good mood. And I had the LFE signal opened up pretty high on up to about 200 hertz, just to see what signal range it would be doing on the Spectrum Lab. I think it was doing above. I think it was doing something that was going above 120. But at the moment, at the present, I don't really care. Most people with home theaters and all that, they probably haven't got a clue how they're running their home theater, because you've probably got the LCR channel blended onto the LFE signal, and you wouldn't have a clue what you're listening to. The LFE is supposed to be a single, Occasionally, I very rarely add bass from the LCR channel onto the LFE, but that's only if the film has got a crap sound mix and hardly any use of like say LFE. But even though the bass that plays over the screen channel is ample enough, and I don't really need it any extra added on the LFE channel or the sub bass channel, unless of course it's a Dolby Stereo, and then I'm just using the OBE. The OBE is a bit technical, really. Bit technical for, because there's not a lot of home theaters that have an OBE, except mine, of course. Yeah. Yeah, so everyone's talking about it still. I don't really particularly honestly care. There was rumours years ago of extending that LFE with an additional signal added onto it, so they can use it for an overhead surround, a single mono overhead surround. But that was years. That was about 20 years or so ago. But it never took off. Because you'd have to have you'd have to run that output from, and have it go through two separate, or a DSP crossover, like say a Behringer today, to sort of do the filtering. Otherwise, you get a bit of a mess on the sound playback. And of course, I don't think it would have taken off, because the 0.1 channel, or the whatever, it can only go to a certain limit in the frequency response. So if they were going to talk about putting overhead sound on it, mono overhead sound on it years ago, it would be very limited, and it wouldn't have much high frequency on it. So yeah, not unless, of course, they completely modify the AVRs and processors and all that, so they have full spectrum range. And then you got, but then you think, what's the fucking point of doing that? Why not just put it on a totally discrete extra channel without this bullshit? Really? But in a way, it's sort of kind of a precursor to the 70mm split surround, and having a specific crossover card, special card that goes in the CP200 processor, and doing the crossover filtering and such, because like I say, it doesn't cross over like that. It's offset like that, so so it minimizes crosstalk. You're hearing, otherwise you'd be, if it crossed over literally, you'd hear the crosstalk. Yeah. Today now you could do that sort of thing very simply with a Behringer DCX. I've done it a few times, even with the LCR channels. I put the crossover, so the crossover on the DCX is like that, because I can still hear where the other frequencies, I can still hear, but I'm just doing it as an effect, or a way to give illusion and boosting the stage based channels. Yeah, so this is a very short one because it's a very boring, dull subject, the LFE. It's all like LFE.1's all dressed up, but it's really got no place where to go, It's just fucking boring just reading this on Audio Science Review, and it's just a few people talking about it. Like, there's not really many people that care about it. And those that talk about, I'm just like curious, like who these characters are on Audio Science Review, because to me they seem very intimidating. Like, I don't give a shit if they're in the fucking movie industry. I really do not give a fuck. But anyway, none of these characters on Audio Science Review can do Star Wars Baby Boom in their home theater. Very few of those around. So yeah. Oh, for crying out! What is going on? What is going on? Bear, what are you doing? Come on. Oh, my goodness. I think my cats are in destructive mode at the moment. They're in destructive mode. Yeah. Mission Cat Impossible. Meow, 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 meow. Actually, there was a popular Mission Impossible episode called The Seal that had a cat, an orange cat called what was the orange cat called? I think it was called Orange. I think they call it Rusty in the TV show. It was an IMF agent cat sort of thing. Strange, funny, because the IMF are the CIA, and the CIA came out with a um, acoustic kitty during, I think, the late 60s or early 70s. Acoustic kitty, disgusting project. Oh, those CIA people really need to get a life. Anyway, that's about the LFE. I mean, it's a boring bloody subject, frankly.